I have something interesting for some nerds out there. Some of the transmissions in the gigahertz level, 24 to 10 gigahertz, or I should say, 2.4 to 10 gigahertz, abruptly stopped at 4:15 a.m. Central Time this morning. They just abruptly stopped. They just stopped. Just nothing. They stopped. Very odd. Very odd indeed. And there's no real trace of why they stopped, but I find that to be highly suspicious. They've been operational for years. They never stopped, but they stopped at 4:15. Why? I'm not sure. I don't want to brief on that one. That's something I don't want to know. And I want to ask you guys something. And the reason why, again, is when you commit your home, your dwelling place, even if you're in somebody else's house, you can commit whatever area that you're in or occupy unto the Lord. You can do that. If you do that, Satan cannot tamper with those things you commit to the kingdom. You guys know that. And often this gets rid of pesky spiritual influences that plenty of people have. In fact, after the Q&A, I'm going to touch base on how spirits normally do throughout your day to try and cause you to be emotionally unbalanced, which in turn causes you to treat people in ways outside of what the Lord decrees. Keep in mind, each one of us, we will stand before the Lord in one of two ways, guilty or innocent. And it's not going to be by what we thought was right. The Lord put in us a truth. And that truth is known by all of us. In fact, everybody knows right from wrong. That was stated in the Old Testament. It's stated in the New Testament. So not one person will have an excuse standing before Christ. If something is knocking you off balance, which, in prayer sometimes the Lord will show you things. And because I talk to a lot of you guys, he will show me things about you all. And almost on a consistent basis, I can see compromises. Right? And what I want to tell you is you don't have to live that way. You do not have to live with those frustrations. But it requires you to commit all your things, all your stuff, and make a final decision to serve the kingdom in the capacity that the Lord has given you. And that capacity you're born with is something that you naturally do, something that's part of you. You cannot separate a person from their calling. Do you know that? Because you're made for the calling, and the calling is made for you. You're one and the same. The way you speak, the way you engage people, the way you respond, these things that you have in your heart that are good towards people, all of this is part of your calling. Many people have been talked into a calling that's not theirs, and they often get knocked off balance doing this, right? It's important that some of you make that decision. Now, it doesn't mean you have to give up everything in your life. That's not what it means. You don't have to go giving everything away either. That's not what it means. It just simply means that you commit yourself to the Lord, directly to him, no longer walking 1 foot in the world and 1 foot that you think is in the kingdom, but to begin to walk forward with the Lord, with your mind on him, not having him in the back of your mind as an afterthought after you enact your will in the earth, but to attempt to live your life upright, doing everything with all your decency you can muster, right? You will slip and fall, and don't feel guilty when you make these mistakes in life. Don't do that. Get back up. Commit yourself to servitude to the Lord, which is to love your neighbor as yourself. Now, one way you love your neighbor as yourself is not to force yourself to love anybody. That does not work. Love doesn't work by force. You must see yourself in everybody else. Your mistakes, your shortcomings, your hang-ups and hiccups, your iniquity. You must realize that when you look at somebody else, and if they're in a terrible state, you're seeing a reflection of yourself. That person is you. That person is in your family, right? See, because the world taught you to look at life one way. If you're a Christian, you understand that what the world taught you does not work out too well. You should know this by now. That's why it says in the Bible that God's people are a peculiar people. They do not function like everybody else because they operate their lives by way of love. And at the number one list when you're walking by the ways of Christ is forgiveness, which means you don't hold grudges. You don't hold anything against your parents, your abusers, your attackers, those thieves that have been in your life. You don't hold things against them. It doesn't mean you have to go live with them either, right? But don't hold anything against them. And it's also time for some of you to never dabble again. God gives us grace and mercy. But I'll give you a warning, something I experienced. If the Lord puts something on your heart, and you put your foot in that hot water one too many times, you're going to lose that foot. Okay, that means some of you know there are areas of your life the Lord said don't go back into, but you keep looking in that direction, right? You do not want the Lord because he does love you. He will remove whatever it is causing you to look that way. You don't want that to happen. It's better to purge yourself than to fall in the hands of the Lord and let him do an immediate and direct work, because that is most severe. Not that you should be afraid of it, no, but it's almost drastic, right? It's like punishment from a dad who never makes mistakes. It's very severe, and it's better to purge yourself, because when you purge yourself, you build upon your relationship with the Lord. If the Lord has to step in, right? If your Father in heaven steps in, it feels like you've been punished. That's what it feels like. And it's better to adjust yourself and work on the relationship so that you can see it properly than to sit for a whole year, right, in a type of corrected position. When you say, even in the Bible it says, it's not a very good thing to fall into the hands of the Lord. It's not. It's better to purge yourselves, to do that by your own action, right? To do that by your own motivations, rather than have the Lord do that for you. Now, some things he will do for you, but normally when you fall into his hands, it's life or death. And I'm telling you guys, there are some things that you may count as insignificant. But note something. Death begins as something insignificant. Please remember that, right? Many of you have probably made that step to commit things to the Lord. But the aggravations you can't get rid of. You have to cease attempting to control things. You don't have to control a thing. You're not here to control your environment. You're here to stand against iniquity. And here's what happens when you take a stance against any evil, right? That includes, be careful with your definitions. Please don't be one of those individuals that will go around defining yourself, or you're in the Bible and you give way to anger and you say, well, the Bible didn't mean don't get angry. It means this. Please don't do that, right? Because we don't know enough. But the conviction within us tells us it is wrong. There is no justification of our out-of-control emotions. And there's no way, no human being on earth can have anything even close to godly anger. That's ridiculous, right? I heard a lot of people, they probably said this in the height of their emotional state, but they tried to justify their anger, saying that it's righteous anger. Well, there's a problem with that. In order to have righteous anger, you have to be righteous. And because it developed from in you, God did not give you anger. You'll never read anywhere in the Bible where God gave a person anger. He does not do that. He will lift himself from anybody who's angry. In order for a person to have righteous anger, they must be righteous within themselves. We are only righteous when we are in Christ. And to be in Christ is to surrender all things of ourselves. So if you step in Christ, how can you be angry and be in Christ? You cannot do that. We're not righteous. There is none righteous, no, not one. Even Jesus said, the Father is good. Because they said, oh, good master, no, your Father in heaven is good. He corrected them. He redirected all those statements to the Father in heaven. So if we are not righteous, we cannot have righteous anger. God's anger is not our anger. Our anger is emotion. God's anger is different. We'll do a study on that. It has nothing to do with what we feel. Even God's indignation is different than our indignation. We're like germs compared to the living God. Germs that are trying to define the small things they feel. There's no way a germ can compare itself to you, because you can prize billions of germs and billions of useful bacteria and billions of other life forms. That one germ cannot compare itself, nor can it conceive how you're made. You can't be compared that way. So this righteous anger thing is nothing more than an avenue for a person to exercise their own dislikes of something. That's all it is. It's a way to vent. Hope you guys understand that.